Alright guys, I watched some YouTube videos to see how to replace a dash top on a second gen Dodge Ram, and a lot of them weren't that great. Some of them showed you how to do it with the dash still in the truck, and I would recommend against that highly, especially if you want to clean it up and blow it out and make sure you got everything correctly. The main reason you want to take it out is because it's very difficult to get to all these screws back here. So you've got 1, 2, 3 in this little spot, and then each vent has got a screw on either side of it. Each brace has a screw on it. So you've got all these screws. One there, 2 more there, 1 there, and then you've got one way down in there to hold the defrost vent in place. So basically what you need to do to pull the dash out, it's pretty simple actually, is you pull the glove box out. You've got 3 plugs behind the glove box: blower, speed control, and radio antenna. It's not focusing very well for some reason. There it is. And then on this side, you climb under there. You pull out this plug with the, I think it's a 10 mil, can't remember. You got an airbag. You got the wires that go up the steering column. You got a few plugs on it. You got a plug here. It's an automatic. You got to get the gear selector wire disconnected. And then there's 3 plugs right here that you got to reach up and unplug. You just push the button on the back, and they're a little difficult, but I got them all right. So you got those plugs. And then there's your vacuum plug, and that's a plug, and that's purposely put in there so you can take the dash out, because they pre-assemble these dashes about the way they are in the factory, and they put them in as basically a unit, and so they made it very easy to pull them out. And the dash hinges on these 2 pivots, basically. They're kind of hinges. You don't even have to take the bolts out, you just loosen those bolts. And there's 2 bolts here on the side that go into the side of this. You take those 2 bolts out, and then you take these 5 bolts or screws out of the top of the dash. So you got these. Once you get everything unplugged, you take those 5 screws out, and the dash will want to kind of fall forward on you. So that's pretty much what it takes to. Oh yeah, and one more thing is there's a cable. I'll show you inside the truck here. But on the older trucks, they've got a mechanical temperature cable instead of electronic one. There's a cable that runs back over, and I'll show you that inside the truck here in just a second. I'm going to pause this, and I'm going to flip the dash over. Okay, I'm back. So I took the airbag out after I pulled the dash out. It's pretty heavy, so if you want to take it out before you pull the dash, it'll save you some weight. The airbag's got 3 bolts in the front there, and then 2 more. Let's see if 2 more there, and then 3 clips. And those clips were actually pretty stiff, and the airbag plastic's pretty soft, so you got to be careful with those. I also took the radio out, which you don't have to, just because I knew I'd be laying it kind of face down. I didn't want to break the knobs off the radio, but it was held in with 2 screws. Took the ashtray out. I didn't take the gauge cluster out, as you can see. The steering column is held up. There's 2 studs that I'll show you in a second inside the truck that poke down through here. So once you get all of your top bolts taken out, and you loosened up these 2 side bolts that I showed you on the back right here, loosen up those on each side, and then you take out these 2, and you got to unplug your I believe this is your airbag module that this plugs into. So 2 bolts and a plug there, and then it'll be ready to come down. What I did is I left one of these nuts on on the stud to hold the whole dash up. And then let's go inside the truck for a second. So this is what the inside looks like. So those nuts I was telling you about go on here, and you don't have to take the steering column out. I took mine out because there was a loose bearing down inside there. And if you want to take the steering column all the way out, you take these 3 nuts off, and there was 1 bolt where the steering column, and then you got to pop the linkage if it's an automatic. So you can take the steering. I would definitely recommend taking these nuts loose, because when you let the steering wheel, basically when you take these 2 nuts off, the steering wheel wants to hang down, and you got to, if you don't take those 3 nuts off, it puts a lot of stress on your firewall. So at least loosen those nuts, and then the steering wheel will fall down and lay against your seat. And the other thing I did, which you could do differently, is if you have an older truck that has a cable instead of the electronic stuff, basically anytime you take these apart, this clip's going to break. There's a little tab there, and every one I've ever taken apart is broken. But in the factory, this was meant to stay hooked up on this end, and then when the dashboard, both, but basically when the dashboard rolls forward, if in my case, because I had the steering column out, this laid on the 4x4 knob, and laid there, and then my buddy came in the passenger side, grabbed the passenger side, and we worked it out and just carried it out the driver's side. But if you, and I think for the way I did it, and this was better, but you could disconnect it at the other end. All the newer trucks have electronic control, so you don't have to worry about that. So basically, I took an air blower in here and blew all the dust and stuff out. So there's those 3 plugs that we talked about earlier. There's the cable. This is the ABS or airbag module. Those 2 bolts on that deal on the bottom of the dash poke in here. And these are a couple of the plugs that hook up. You got to disconnect your hood latch. And then also there's a little metal bar. I don't know where I set it. But for the steering wheel to drop down, once you take this front cover off in the front of it, there's a metal bar with some screws you got to take off. But really, you can just unplug, make sure you get everything unplugged, roll it forward, and 2 guys can just carry it out. And the guys that leave them in lean over their dash, and they work really hard to get back up in there to get to those screws. And in reality, if you got it far enough to where you can roll it forward, it only takes an extra couple minutes to just lift it off of those bolts, which are here where it rocks on these 2 bolts. And if you're going to roll it forward to get to the screws, don't be lazy, just take it out. That way you can get in here. I blew it all out, took a brush and brushed all the hard stuff and got all the sand and the dust buildup out from underneath the cables. Definitely well worth it. And I did the same for the dash. So I just got a few more screws on the front to put in, and then I'm going to have my buddy help me set it back in place and screw it back together. This is an LMC dash top. After doing a bunch of reading online, LMC is a clear winner, and so far all the screw holes lined up perfect. The molding, everything is identical to the factory. You cannot tell these LMC dash tops. You can't tell the difference from the factory. They do a really, really good job. They came with these little vents already in them. They came with the rubber on them, and everything fits really, really well. They're $280. I think I paid $280 something, and then they charged me another $20 or something for an oversized fee, and I got it within a few days. But if you got one of these trucks and you like it, definitely do it right. Hope this helps.